It should be. Good
evening, everybody. I'd like to call the City of Lake Forest Park City Council regular meeting to order for Thursday, February 8th. At this time, I'd like I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, do I hear a motion for adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, colleagues? No discussion. All those in favor of adoption of the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you, Councilmember Goldman. A little latency there. The ayes have it. Thank you, Council. And with that, we're going to move on to public comments really quickly here. And I would say two things. I'm going to add to the public comment. I should have actually done this at the beginning of the meeting. It would be respectful if everybody make sure their cell phones and their email chimes and their heart monitors and their Pokemon, I don't know, whatever it is. My daughter's into Pokemon. Chimes are turned off, please, out of respect for our friends here. Public comments. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council on agenda items or any topic the council might have purview or control over. If the comments are of a nature that the council does not have influence or control over, then the mayor may request that the speaker suspend their comments. The council may direct staff to follow up on items brought up by the public. Comments are limited to a 3-minute time limit. Okay, and with that, Matt, do we have any members of the public that would like to make public comment?
If you want to address the council, please raise the hand function. Like we have Julian Anderson.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Anderson, welcome.
I think I'm unmuted. Do you?
We can hear you.
Great. I was listening to your work session just a little bit ago on the Public Records Act, and a question occurred to me in the area of limitation of risk. The presentation pointed out that one aspect of limitation of risk was the prompt destruction of documents after they had survived the council-adopted record retention policy period. It seems to me there's another risk that's kind of at cross purposes to that risk elimination process. And that is the risk of destroying documents that later would be the subject of a legitimate public records request. So I'm just wondering if both risks are being equally and properly considered in your policy and practice, or if not. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Great question. And make sure that staff follows up on that as well. It's a really important question. Is there anyone else in the ether sphere that would like to make public comment? Are there? Thank you, Chief. I went backwards today. Thank you very much. Well, there's no one signed up for public comment, but at this time, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to make public comment? Always welcome. Okay, thank you. With that, we will close public comment. Hand this off to the clerk, and then we're going to move on to, sir. Proclamations. The first one I will read. It's my pleasure to recognize February as Black History Month. Whereas each year, Black History Month is observed in February, and whereas the origins of Black History Month date back to 1915, when Dr. Carter G. Woodson founded the organization known today as the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and whereas observing Black History Month provides opportunities to gain a deeper understanding of African American history and acknowledge the centuries of struggles for equality and freedom, and whereas Black History Month also celebrates the achievements and contributions that African Americans have made in shaping our country, society, and communities. And whereas every year, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History sets a theme for Black History Month. And the theme for 2024 is African Americans and the Arts. And whereas this year's Black History Month theme is a call to everyone to study the many impacts Black Americans have had on visual and performing arts, literature, fashion, folklore, language, film, music, architecture, culinary, and other forms of cultural expression. And whereas to participate in observing Black History Month, those interested can visit www.asalh.org to learn more about the origins of the month, this year's theme, and African American history. Now, therefore, the mayor and the city council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim February 2024 Black History Month in the city of Lake Forest Park, and I urge all citizens to join me in this special observance signed this 8th day of February 2024. Tom French, Mayor. And with that, I'd like to move on to another special proclamation. I've asked Councilmember Bertani to read.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this is a great honor for me.
Thank you. You bet.
All right. Whereas on February 19th, 1942, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 9066, which authorized the United States military to forcibly remove and incarcerate more than 120,000 persons of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast, including 12,000 Japanese American residents of Washington State. And whereas the first civilian evacuation order gave Japanese Americans from Bainbridge Island less than 1 week to leave behind homes, personal belongings, farms, businesses, friends, and family, and report to hastily constructed detention centers like Camp Harmony on the grounds of the Washington State Fair in Fyall. And whereas this drastic course of action allegedly aimed to prevent acts of espionage and sabotage by Japanese Americans who were deemed untrustworthy and disloyal to the United States. And whereas on March 23rd, 1943, the War Department organized a segregated unit of Japanese Americans, many of whom reported for military duty from the concentration camps surrounded by barbed wire in which they and their families were detained. And whereas more than 12,000 volunteers responded to questions about their loyalty and patriotism by amassing a battle record unparalleled in the United States military history, with a casualty rate of 314% and earning a collective 7 Presidential Unit citations, 21 Medals of Honor, 29 Distinguished Service Crosses, 1 Distinguished Service Medal, 588 Silver Stars, more than 4,000 Bronze Stars, 22 Legion of Merit Medals, 145 Soldiers Medals, 9,486 Purple Hearts, 1 decoration from France and Italy, and in 2010, the Congressional Gold Medal. And whereas in 1982, the Congressional Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians found no military or security reason for the internment of persons of Japanese ancestry, but determined the cause of the incarceration as racial prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. And whereas through this travesty of justice, Japanese Americans suffered immense economic loss of property and assets, immeasurable physical and psychological harm, and were deprived of their constitutional liberties without due process of law. And whereas in 1979, Washington State Congressman Mike Lowry introduced H.R. 5977 to provide reparations and an apology to the Japanese American incarcerees, thus initiating a 10-year legislative quest that ended when President Ronald Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. And whereas throughout Washington State, the last remaining survivors of the European and Asian Pacific battlefields of World War II and of American incarceration camps lived their golden years in quiet contrast to their extraordinary acts of conscience and valor, while all of America continues to benefit from their heroic patriotism. And whereas there were no Japanese or Japanese American residents in the Lake Forest Park development due to restrictive racial covenants, there were several families of Japanese descent within the current Lake Forest Park city limits who were relocated. Now, therefore, the mayor and city council of the city of Lake Forest Park pause to acknowledge the anniversary of the signing of Executive Order 9066 to recognize and remember Japanese American veterans, incarcerees, and civil rights activists from the state of Washington, and to honor the lessons and blessings of liberty and justice for all, and to proclaim February 19th, 2024 as the Day of Remembrance in the city of Lake Forest Park. And we urge all citizens to join us in this special observance signed this 8th day of February 2024.
Thank you, Councilmember. It's a sad chapter in our history. I appreciate for reading that. Gives us all pause. With that, we are going to move on to presentations. Corey Roche has a presentation on an update on the Lakefront Park Plan. Welcome, Corey.
Still recovering a little bit. So yeah, tonight I'm here to do a brief update on where we are with the Lakefront Park property.
Ellen and Larry, can you hear everybody okay there? Yes, I got a thumbs up. Okay, yeah, you're,
Okay.
thank
I
you.
can hear you. It's a little glitchy.
Okay,
Okay. So we have an update schedule of the open house community workshop will be on February 21st, 5:30 to 7:30 here in the council chambers. We'll have representatives from the traffic and architecture and environmental planning and watershed here to answer detailed questions of plans that we have going forward. We'll be at the Parks and Rec Board for them to deliberate on preferred alternate recommendation to council that week of February 29th, 27th, 29th. March 7th, you guys will have a special city council meeting. We'll do another presentation of the preferred design alternates. The committee as a whole will be back in case there's any changes to these design alternatives and presenting at the March 28th meeting for hopeful adoption to get ready for that RCO May 1st deadline. And then in April, we'll begin the schematic design review. So here you can see there's the we'll be having two stages of demos going. We'll have the early works where we're looking at taking, because of grants and the project moving forward, cabins 1 through 4 and 5 will be going away structurally and the grants. That will be in that first part, and that cabin 9, it's small shelter. Those will be demoed in the early work section. And then the later process of the full docks and everything will be once we go to actual construction. There you can see it's kind of pieced out into 9 different sections. We have like the sidewalk and from like the town hall to the park area, the Line Creek Water Preserve, the parking, the main house area, and then some of the beach areas split up that will go into a little bit more detail here. So here are the 3 different main building options we have. They're calling them small, medium, and large, just based off of like the footprints of accessibility that'll be in there. You'll see like the red on there represents like the kitchen of the different options to be moved around depending on what option community park board and you guys will like want. The option, the medium and the large will have an option of having a bathroom in there with a small storage closet of some sort. And then the garage on that property next to the house will be the public bathroom open at all times. So the house may not be open for the public with those restrooms. So having that public restroom at all when the park's open will be available. The deck, there's 2 options that are going to be presented. There's calling the grand deck. You can see at the top, it'll be much larger view over the park area, or a smaller modest size. That's kind of like the current plan on there. And all will be retrofitted ADA accessible. And then here is where we kind of get into the options that get a little bit more detailed of if we comes out, community and council and park board all want to keep cabin 6, which could be another space for either office, another meeting room. It will have like a small bathroom, see at the top, but keeping that cabin or removing it depends on the parking options. We kind of have like a third option coming in now of keeping that with a little bit more parking. You can see on the right. And then that left is just the very minimal parking, ADA accessible. And these are in line with that big house parking needs. So we'll have the 3 different options for the picnic shelter out there, not necessarily like these designs or anything, but just look at the footprints and size going forward. The preserve, looking at doing some enhancements over there of removing that gravel trail towards like the civic club area and replanting and revegetating that. It would be removing all the invasive species out there, kind of relocating the bridge that is on that near the civic club and moving it into the park, and then having viewing platforms like throughout the park to be very passive. You can go there, sit there, look at nature. Maybe we'll have like educational signage of, you know, environmental and tribute to tribals, or, you know, we'll later on just go through that. But just a lot of the community really wants viewing spaces and just to sit there. And so that's what this kind of provides in keeping the preserve, the preserve.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Burke.
Yeah.
Yes. Corey, you might mention what happens to the existing dock in that.
Yeah,
For
I'll go
preserve.
to the dock. I'll
Okay,
get to the
you'll do
docks
that
in
all
a,
separately.
yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Um,
Deputy Mayor.
And then here you have like the middle area, the play options, you know, depending on the deck that can overlook, it will be able to overlook all this area and hopefully see out, overlooking like a natural play area, and keeping the lawn, of course. And then I think, yeah, this is the beach area options, which the 2 of the lower one, it has a path to, you know, go launch kayaks, paddle boards,
me.
or keeping it all open and no necessarily designated launch area. But it's, you know, depending on how much shore area does people really want, or is there like a real need for the kayak launch? And then here are the dock options. So the 2 docks will go away. The one on the lakefront property right now is not, it's not safe to go on at all. And the dock at Line Creek is aging. So there's going to be needing work to done on that at some point. So the idea is doing one big dock that will be on the lakefront property, longer and bigger to provide the viewing options people are wanting to just go sit out there. You know, like we took Mark out there and showed him the property the other day, and you just see people sitting on the dock out at Line Creek, and people did turn around because there wasn't space out there for people to go and hang out. So this gives the 2 options of a bigger space. Really with this, the bigger the dock, the more money it's going to be. So we'll just kind of have to see about that, but this really will like centralize all the park to kind of be in that main focused area. And that's kind of my brief update of where we are right now. So
Thank you, Ms. Roche. Excellent presentation. Thank you for you and your team's hard work on this. Colleagues, questions for Ms. Roche? Councilmember Riddle.
Less a question and recognition of really turning Lion Creek Preserve into a preserve and taking the traffic out of that. I think that's really important for the work that we're doing for our streams and for salmon recovery. Question about the dock. Did the discussion of doing the dock in possibly 2 stages come up at all as part of a budget sort of conversation, or is that not the level of detail that you've had access to yet?
Sort of. So we know to do the dock, there's gonna have to be construction into the property. So really staging, once the dock will have to be kind of the first thing needed to be done. To get that done out there, I think the more, if you do it all from the water, the more expensive it gets. So really trying to get that dock done while the main areas are being constructed is the goal for that.
So there's a constructability challenge if we were to build it 2/3 big and then try to extend it later. That would be a cost
Extending
challenge?
it later? Yeah, I guess I don't think we haven't gotten to that
Got
detail
it.
yet.
It's okay. I was just curious. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, Councilmember Good.
Is there any dredging required for putting in the dock?
No, we won't be like dredging is not part of this, but removing the two docks is a very environmentally friendly, kudo points to all that. So we'll be doing one dock that'll be up to code and I think hopefully help some of those issues that are starting to collect down there, removing those two, removing the piling, also helps all that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Lebo.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm curious about what the perceived function is for the big house or the little house. And then finally, has the team had an opportunity to look at how long it takes to permit a dock?
Yeah, so they're looking at the permitting process right now, but we met with Mark this weekend to get going on all that. I'm sorry, what was the other?
The function that you perceive for the
Oh, the
big
main house. Yeah, so I think, that's definitely something that will come later, like the programming of it, but really just a big open space for meeting. Maybe like lower recreational, like art classes, dance classes, just very, I think the community just really, we've heard is a meeting space right now. So just keeping it very simple and opening it up for those options.
Mr. Furtani.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really informative. I think this is the first time that we've seen kind of the whole picture with numbers added to it. So as the mayor would tell you, don't do math on TV. So I did some back of the envelope calculations, and if we go with basically the ranges that were given on all the different options, I'm getting something a little bit over 6 million to something a little over 9 million. And I'm just wondering, we're not trying to pay for this all in one go, right? Like, for
Well-
instance, the RCO grant, what is that going to be for?
Well, we're looking at all that, and I do doubt we'll be able to find all the funding to get everything done at one point, but maybe the house comes at a later date and we can do the park functioning part first. And I think that would include the dock though as well. So the dock and kind of like that front area would need to really be done first and then kind of move back. Maybe the house does come at a later date, but we are, looking at all the grant funding options to get as much done as we can.
You have a follow-up?
I did, thank you.
Okay.
So kind of on point then. So I know that we are trying to pursue as much grant funding as possible, but is it possible that we might have to float a bond measure or something like that in order to get this project done?
I don't know if that's mine to answer.
This falls under don't do math on TV.
Exactly.
Okay. And actually, that's not mine. I give credit to someone else who says that on our team. Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Goldman, you had a question.
Yes, a question and then a comment. The question is, so I got the postcard for the February 21st meeting. Is that going to be essentially the same as the first meeting, or will it have these options to collect public feedback on these sort of very specific, what do you want to see from the big house, that sort of thing?
So this will be about the options that just showing you. It won't be like the programming of any, like the house of like what will be taking place in it, but getting the input of the layout. Maybe we hear what kind of programming they do want in there, and that kind of decides which option of the house we do go with. But yeah.
So, and I think that'll be important because from the postcard, I wasn't quite sure if it was just a second identical workshop or if it was sort of refinements based on the first workshop. And then for the council, I think it'd be helpful, when I'm choosing between the three options for the big house, to kind of have an idea in mind, what do we want to use it for? Or what do we want to see in the play area? Because that'll help me decide which play area option makes more sense based on what sort of amenities or functionality we want from it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, Deputy Mayor Bodie, excuse me.
Thank you. I just want to thank our board and the consultants and Corey, because I think we've put together a lot of good information on the options. There is a little bit more information underneath all of these options that the consultants have developed. So I think some of the questions Councilmember Goldman has asked about there are at least exploration of those topics that are available as the council. I think the Parks Board has had some of those discussions, and the council will have some of those discussions as well. And my understanding on the funding is we are lucky to have consultants who are quite familiar with the different pots of money that are available, which is why we're trying to at least have a design concept so that we can go into the spring funding cycle, because if we miss that, then there's 2 years that we have to wait. And so exactly what will be able, I think it will have to be phased, but exactly what is going to be our best package, I think remains to be seen. There's no question that we have to do the demolition of the buildings on the north side because that was part of the grant. So that's going to have to be an early action, and the shoreline and the dock and kind of the balance of mitigation that comes from some of the enhancements we're going to do in Lion Creek Preserve and with the dock removals. That all kind of fits together into a bit of a package. So it could well be that the house and what's around the house is a later phase, I think, realistically, because the price tag is substantial. Can I say on that, the other thing that the board has talked about is for amenities there, whether it's benches or paving stones or whatever, are there opportunities for the community to donate or other organizations to donate beyond our basic grants? So in terms of funding, I think we do have a lot of potential in our community and the surrounding area for that. So just wanted to say thank you. I think this is pretty exciting. And I hope that we get good feedback at the workshop.
And the workshop we found out it is shorelines when midwinter break. So we're kind of pivoting and putting a bigger online open house too. So that will be open a week from that 21st for a week to get more input. So and part of the demo, the early works demo, will be salvaging what we do want and can keep, the bricks and any timber or cool things we want to keep for the future. So
Wonderful. That's more riddle.
Just a question, if from a policing safety standpoint, has this been run through our police department so that they have had a chance to weigh in? Has that happened yet?
not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah, we will.
I think before bringing it to the public, I'd love to make sure that
Yep.
we have some comfort zone with the options.
Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you. If there's an opportunity, as you think about the capital cost, if we can also think about the annual O&M costs,
Yeah.
operations and maintenance costs.
Yeah, they're
Because there will be a cost to keep it up each year, as well as the future capital cost to maintain it.
Excellent point. That's a perennial question, isn't it, about parks? With that, colleague, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Ms. Rose.
Thank you,
Excellent
guys.
presentation, and thanks for all your hard work on this. With that, we're moving on to the consent calendar. I'd entertain a motion for adoption.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the consent calendar, folks? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, colleagues. We're moving on to the final confirmation calendar for the Salary Commission interviews. I've asked Clerk McLean to do a brief introduction for this since we don't have somebody on lead. This was actually something the council adopted 2 years ago and it was never stood up, so to speak. So this is a moving forward with what we had discussed a couple of years ago. Thank you, Mr. McLean, for doing this on the fly.
Yeah. So we received 3 applications for the Salary Commission, which is enough to seat the board. So tonight you'll be interviewing them. This is a little bit different than final confirmation because usually the mayor interviews the candidates beforehand. Since they're setting the salary and of the commission or the council and the mayor at the same time, we felt that it would be better for the council as a whole to interview them directly and then make a choice about seating them. So tonight we have Carol, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce your file, Donna Hawkey and Michael Troyer. So I think that's about it, unless anybody has any questions about the
Colleagues, any
commission.
questions about the procedure? Thank you, Matt. So Carol, if you would start, just introduce yourself and just tell the council why you would like to be part of this commission.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My husband and I have been residents for 32 years and I'm recently retired and I'm looking for some volunteer opportunities. And this particular commission really fits well with my skill set. I'm an accountant by training and had my own business as a consultant for more years than I care to admit to right now. And like I said, I just think that it's a good fit for my background and the ability to volunteer.
Thank you, Carol. Colleagues, questions of Ms. Fyall? Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Yes.
Ms. Fyall, you seem very qualified. So I don't really have any follow-up questions. I appreciate your stepping up and volunteering your time to this new commission. So
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Donna Hawkey. Welcome. You can raise that up too as well if you like.
Oh, it's fine. You can hear me, right? Yep.
Yes.
I'm Donna Hawkey and I've been a resident for 27 years. And I really feel this is a statement of valuing the service and the selfishness that selflessness that you guys do. I used to write for the Shoreline Area News and I sat here for years. And I saw what you do. I saw how complicated the decisions can be. I saw the stress that you put up with sometimes. And I talked to some of you out there until 10 o'clock at night, picking your brains and see how committed you all are. So, and I heard that this hasn't been reviewed since 2013. And I was pretty embarrassed and about that kind of thing for the people who are, again, giving their time and their service to the city. So I think it's important to review it at this point. Been too long.
Thank you, Donna. Colleagues, questions of Ms. Hawkey? Yeah, Councilmember Riddle.
Just a comment to recognize that you see that this is a barrier sometimes to folks being able to participate in the civic process.
Yes.
And I appreciate you recognizing that. So thank you.
Yes, it would be great for more diversity and maybe this will bring more people interested and that maybe couldn't do it. So.
Colleagues, other question? Yes, Councilmember Fertoni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Hawkey, for stepping up and really appreciate the volunteer work that you and your colleagues are going to do. And I also wanted to put in a plug for the Shoreline Area News and the fact that you wrote for so long about civic matters. I think that's a very underrepresented part of the whole news sphere that we have now. And the fact that, we have even that one outlet is great. And so talking to TV land out here, but if anybody else wants to kind of step up and start writing about us in Shoreline Area News, might not be a bad idea. Thank you.
Haven't done it in a while, but I do miss it. But
Yeah.
I've taken on some other
And
things, so.
I would be remiss if I didn't remind my colleagues that Ms. Hawkey also served on the sort of ill-fated Economic Development
Yes.
Commission a decade ago, I believe.
Yep.
One of the commissions that was dissolved many years ago. Hopefully we'll have some additional work on that front at some point as well. Any other questions, colleagues? Thank you, Ms. Hawkey.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
yours.
It's an honor.
And then lastly, we have Michael Troyer. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Again, my name's Michael Troyer, and I'm happy to be here tonight. I've been a resident with my wife in Lake Forest Park since 2016. Grew up in Seattle and spent all of my professional career in downtown Seattle. I find Lake Forest Park to be the friendliest place I've lived since growing up on Queen Anne. Seem to know everybody, and so that's how I met at least one of my two colleagues on this endeavor. And I think from my professional background, I can offer a lot to this program. Been involved a little bit with city business and advising our planning commission on some housing issues that we have. And so at Donna's invitation, I applied, and thank you for considering me.
Thank you, Michael. Colleagues, questions, Mr. Troyer? Online, I'm sorry, Mr. Lebo.
I just want to express appreciation for stepping forward and your clear honesty about how you are being presented here today as a member. Thank you for the other citizens for bringing forward those that are well qualified for this. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Furtani.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Troyer, for stepping up and volunteering, and would be remiss if we did not recognize your work with NUSA and with the Community Land Trust idea. So thank you so much for
Yes.
that as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, with that, thank you, Mr. Troyer. Appreciate it. Mr. McLean, what's the formality here? Does the council need to make a formal motion to accept or to?
I think that would be appropriate unless their city attorney has a different option.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Deputy Mayor Bodie.
I would like to move the adoption of the salary commission members, Carol Fyall, Donna Hawkey, and Michael Troyer.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I just want to say thank you so much, and I know all of you have contributed to the community already, and this will be an important additional contribution. So appreciate the time you're about to spend on this.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Riddle.
I just want to say, when I was asked to join council, I was told that to consider my compensation as coffee money. And with the inflation, I'm not getting very many coffees. And I really do appreciate the attention that you're providing to this. It's 2003 is long time ago. Thank you very much for stepping up.
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, I will add to my colleagues. I want to thank all three of you for volunteering your time for this committee. I think you're all very qualified, and I look forward to seeing the work that you do on this. But yeah, thank you again for volunteering.
Thank you, Larry. Colleagues, any other questions or comments on point? With that, we'll move on with the vote. All those in favor of confirming the salary commission members, Carol Fyall, Donna Hawkey, and Michael Troyer, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? The ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you so much for your service. All three of you. We really look forward to your good work. Okay, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Matt, very much for the introduction. We're moving on to ordinances and resolutions for action. I apologize. This is the point in the evening where my voice starts to fail. I believe this is Councilmember Riddle is going to introduce Resolution 24-1943. My dyslexia is kicking in here. Amending the Lake Forest Park Governance Manual regarding council liaisons. Councilmember Riddle, please.
Thank you. As I brought to you earlier, a document adding some additional information on supporting a liaison's role so that there's clarity of their role as well as continuity as new board members come on and take on liaison roles. So from that larger document, the small subcommittee sort of filtered it down to its most critical elements. So it's all very much the same content. It's just a lot more precise. So what we're really asking for with this change is to clarify committee means all of our different types of boards and stuff, just a Scrivener sort of issue, but then clarifying that the council member who is serving as a liaison is not a member of the committee, and creating a nice boundary there so that there's a clear separation of roles. And that liaison is acting as a representative of the full council and not in their own capacity, and not to balance out the needs of the council communicating to those boards, those committees, as well as preventing an outsized influence from one council member who has more access than the rest of us, to create that balance and make sure that the liaison is sharing that information equitably. But a council member isn't just has to listen. They can engage, but we've added some language around providing additional context and background. There's a lot of knowledge that we carry as council members, and we didn't want to limit ourselves to not be able to engage with those sort of factual conditions. So being able to direct folks to certain areas of the municipal code or certain reasoning that is on record as to why we chose to go a particular direction is definitely acceptable. In C, there is something within brackets where we didn't come to a 3-person consensus. So we wanted to bring 2 options to the group here related to, and I'll read the 2 options for you now. A council member liaison can provide context and background on approved policies and regulations while respecting the independence of the committee in its recommendation process, or respecting the independence of the committee in its deliberations and discussions. And there was a very wonderful discussion amongst us as to sort of wordsmithing between the 2 sort of definitions. I fell on the side of deliberations and discussions, and my fellow council member, Lori Bodie, really felt that recommendation process was the way to go. I think that's definitely a discussion we wanted to bring to this council since we didn't come to an agreement. And then we want to make sure that the liaison obviously keeps the council updated on the work of the committee. There is a work plan, so it's good to know what's going on, but also to be the conduit to share requests. If the work plan needs to be amended, adjusted, if they have additional resources that they need, if the consultant needs to come in and do different work, that liaison is a wonderful way to bring that back to council so that we can determine if we want to invest more resources or adjust the work plan. And then lastly, that the council member liaison will facilitate timely reporting of the committee back to the council as appropriate. And we haven't made sort of formal, when we do our reports at the end of the evenings, but like this may mean more formal, this may mean more informal. It's going to depend on the nature of the committee that they are liaising with. But we wanted to make sure that that was something that didn't fall off the radar, that is bringing that report back to us on a regular basis is really important. It keeps us from having to, go and watch the committee meetings. So that is pretty much all that we wanted to add, and I will open up to my fellow council members if you have any questions or concerns, and then I'd like to get into sort of discussion on level item C if there are no.
Thank you, Councilor Riddle, and your colleagues for the hard work on this, and I I want to bookmark this since it's going to be a challenging year in our country, maybe. Another civil conversation where we can disagree with respect and consideration, come together as a body, or you all can come together as a body. I would defer to Deputy Mayor Bodier. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Riddle, for bringing this forward and getting this organized and discussed. Really appreciate it. I think that I appreciate the fact that we tried to make this more concise and affirmative, but reflect our experience. In other words, share that so that as new council members become liaisons, they actually have a sense of the expectations. On the other hand, we wanted to retain the flexibility because every board and commission and committee is a little bit different. So I appreciate the work on this and look forward to the comments from our other council members, or Vice Chairman Fortani was also on this committee. I don't know if he has any other comments to make.
Mr. Furtani, yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my esteemed colleagues, Councilmember Riddle, who took the lead on this, as well as Deputy Mayor Bodie. And I'm agnostic on the consideration of recommendation process versus deliberations and discussions. We know our intent, and so the exact wording to me wasn't, so I would defer to anybody on the council who wants to give some clarity on that point. But the fact is that, we just appointed 3 members of the Salary Commission, and of course, that's going to have a council liaison. So what's nice about this is that, of course, it was such a fraught thing as the salary of the council members and the mayor themselves. Having a council member who could unduly influence the discussions of that would be really antithetical to the reason we had that ordinance in the first place. So I think this is a very timely change in our wording and our governance manual. So I really thank you very much for that.
Thank you, council member. Colleagues, opening up to the floor here. Councilmember Lebo.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the effort that the council members have put forward to this, and I appreciate the brevity that has been incorporated here. I would suggest perhaps a compromise on the language here, that respecting the independence of the committee in its discussions and recommendations.
Hybrid.
I am fine with that. Yes.
Where were you?
C.
Earlier.
C. Oh, where were you earlier? Oh,
Here.
fair enough. Councilmember Goldman, actually, wait, just one moment, Larry, I apologize. Councilmember Lebo, thoughts on Mr. Lebo's suggestion? On point.
I agree
I'm
with.
seeing thumbs up in a bunch of places here.
No concern.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Goldman, thank you, Larry, for being patient.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, thanks for making this more concise. I like it. I actually very much like Councilmember Lebo's suggestion. And part of that, my experience with the tree board is some of what they do, they're making recommendations on our code. And other times they're working to plan an Arbor Day celebration or working on how to update the website, which aren't really recommendations to us, but they're still discussions amongst them. I like that discussions and recommendations idea.
Thank you, council member. Colleagues, other thoughts on these changes to the governance manual? It is Councilmember Furtani.
In that case, I'd like to move resolution 24/1943, amending the Lake Forest Park Governance Manual regarding council liaisons with the amendment to change that phrase in section C to discussions and recommendations. So reading it aloud, the council member liaison can provide context and background on approved policies and regulations while respecting the independence of the committee in its discussions and recommendations.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution as amended resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, colleagues. Another great piece of work. Really appreciate that. The governance manual is an evolving document, as we know, and Many thanks to those of you who are helping out with that. With that, we are on to item 10, council discussion and action. I believe that's Director Perigo, speed study for SR 522 and SR 104, excuse me. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we are going to be talking about the potential safe speed study for 104 and 522, as you mentioned. As the city pushes forward to reduce speeds on our locally controlled streets, WashDOT controlled state routes 104 and 522 remain at speeds higher than desired. The council and administration have made several requests to WashDOT to reduce the speed limits on SR 522 and SR 104 to increase safety and provide consistency within those corridors. WashDOT recently completed a study of the 522 corridor, resulting in a speed reduction in Kenmore. However, WashDOT's review of the same data led them to conclude that a corresponding reduction was not warranted in Lake Forest Park. The administration engaged Transpo Group to review the data, which subsequently supports the reduction of the speed along the state highways to 35 miles per hour on Lake Forest Park. Transpo Group's findings were conveyed to WashDOT along with a meeting request to review the findings. In early January, we received notice from WashDOT that the speed limits on SR 522 between Northeast 145th and 38th Avenue and SR 104 between 19th Avenue Northeast and Shoreline and 35th Avenue Northeast here in Lake Forest Park will be reduced to 35 miles per hour later on this year.
Yay.
Yay.
Furthermore, WashDOT did commit to review the revised roadway context and recommend a possible speed reduction for both highways once the pending Sound Transit BRT project and the on 522 and the resurfacing project on 104 is complete. So hopefully we can get some additional reduction in speed once those two projects are complete. At the council meeting on December 14th, 2023, the administration was directed to engage with Transpo Group to provide a scope and fee estimate to conduct a speed study for those state routes 104 and 522 and report to council within 60 days. We engaged with Transpo Group and they provided a scope and fee, and that is estimated to require 102 hours of their time for a total estimated cost of around $21,000. Funding would come from the Safe Streets Early Action Fund, which does not have the necessary funds to fully support that contract, as well as the other activities that remain for the calendar year within our traffic calming program. A supplemental funding request for the Safe Streets Early Action Fund would need to be appropriated. Given the progress in reducing the speeds on state highways and the commitment from WashDOT, we are requesting direction on whether to proceed with a proposed study. So at this point, again, do we want to do the study for 104 and 522 at the cost of $21,000 and have additional funding appropriated for that fund?
Thank you, Director Perigo. Colleagues, questions? Councilmember Riddle, excuse me. Apologies.
To clarify from WashDOT's recommendation that 38th or kind of just a little bit north of 155th till I believe the Kenmore border of Bothaway, they were not recommending a change and they're recommending that stay at 40. Is that what I understand?
At this point, yes.
At this point, that's what they've got. Okay, thank you.
Colleagues, other questions of Director Perigo? Excuse me.
You back up a moment, a couple things. You had suggested that the WashDOT was continuing to look at the overall speed limit, and so you were suggesting that maybe the council not take action because it might not be money well spent.
That would be consideration to make at this point, given the fact that they are reducing the speed limits and they will continue to look at that in the future. Do we want to expend the $21,000 for the study for just 104 and 522? Is that still something council would like to pursue?
But they were only at this point proposing from 145th to 38th at 35 miles an hour and from 35th to 195th to 35 from 40, right?
Correct, it would lower that. from
And
40
there
to
was also
35.
a suggestion that it would be not until they finish the Sound Transit project that they would reconsider the speed limit, which is 27, 28.
Correct.
And then if I may indulge,
Absolutely.
at $21,000, you said there wasn't sufficient funds within the Safe Streets budget and that it would need to be supplemented by how much? I missed that part.
Just to cover the 21,000, you're looking at about 6,000 plus. That includes all the other activities that we do with the traffic calming group for the rest of the year. So that could be another 40 to 50,000.
I'm sorry. The ask is 21. And how much available is in there in the Safe Streets?
Currently, we have about $16,000 that's not encumbered.
It's not encumbered, so you'd need another $5,000.
Just for the safe speed study. We also have additional things that we need to do for the rest of the year through the traffic calming program.
That are not funded or are funded?
They're not funded. Well, we have $15,000 left to do those activities for the rest of the year. If
But you estimated those at 40 or 50,000?
probably it's somewhere in that ballpark, we do about 50,000 per year.
So I will yield and then come back if there are no other questions.
You bet. Councilmember Furtani.
So to follow up on Councilmember Lebo's line of questioning, the 21,000 that we wouldn't spend on this study could go to other traffic calming measures.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilmember Good.
The greatest problem with the speed is in the area that they don't want to lower. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I can
I
definitively.
mean, it's between 155th and to Town Center is what we're talking about.
To the Kenmore border.
Okay. So that's where the most speed is. I can vouch for that. So I think it would be worthwhile myself to spend the money if it would help to lower the speed limit because that is a problematic area, my opinion.
Thank you, Councilmember. Deputy Mayor Bodie.
I am puzzled why they declined to reduce the speed limit. So now we have this little zone that would be 40 miles an hour from 155th to the Kenmore border. And yet we have 3 or 4, depending on how you want to measure it, crosswalks in that area where we have pedestrian safety issues. So, and also waiting to reevaluate that till the Sound Transit project is done, given the potential high costs and potential delays with that project doesn't make sense to me. So could you explain what their rationale was for not including that portion? Because it mystifies me. It just kind of almost seems like, well, we'll give you half a loaf. But to me, I mean, why would you have 35, 40, and then 35 back in Kenmore when you have all this pedestrian interaction in that stretch? It just leaves me puzzled what they could be thinking.
That was our question to them over and over again. How can you leave this section and not do the entire corridor at the same?
And their rationale for leaving it 40 was?
Basically, they're saying that the data doesn't support that. However, our transpo letter does. So we would continue to pursue that with them based on our.
So even if we don't spend this money, we would continue to pursue that with them based on the work that Transpo has already done for us, critiquing their analysis. And I just want to say, I'm quite pleased with what they have agreed to do. Because I think that's a testament to the continued pressure and questioning that our staff and Transpo have been providing. So I much appreciate that. It's just, it almost seems like they couldn't quite get there, right? So so that's an important distinction, that we will still continue to advocate based on the critique of their data that we've done.
Absolutely. And also the issue or the opportunity or whatnot for when the park does come on board in a couple of years, the additional traffic that we'd have, the pedestrian traffic was brought up also as another.
Yeah,
point
that,
to-
and that, that has to be factored in because even if we don't have the building open, at some point, we're going to have the park open, right? So.
Colleagues, if I may, just on point to the deputy mayor's comment, Transpo Group did refute the WashDOT's assertions about the speed limit and poked some pretty serious holes in their data analysis, which I personally have reviewed and believe it's flawed in my layperson's experience. So that is still pending, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Perigo,
Correct.
that we have not had the response back from WashDOT about our rebuttal from Transpo of their assertion that it should stay.
Correct. We have not had that meeting with WashDOT yet. They have not responded to our request from a month ago, at least. Yeah.
Thank you, colleagues, for indulging me. Councilmember Brittle.
One question and then a comment. In the language, there was, I'm trying to get to the language here. They would address 104 again after scheduled improvements in 2026. Obviously, that's not the roundabout. That's just other planned improvements that they've had on the books for a while.
They have suggested to us in 26 maybe an aspirational date for WashDOT. It might be more like 27, 28 timeframe, perhaps a little bit longer. At that point, they will have to do complete streets improvements also.
Okay.
So that's kind of the target that they were shooting for most recently is probably 27, 28.
Okay, thank you. Definitely getting it lower earlier is important, especially because once they do construction, it's going to be lower anyway. So let's just get in the habit now. My comment that I wanted to bring up is if my colleagues recall, I abstained on our motion for this back in December, knowing that we didn't have all our information yet back from WashDOT, and worried that we'd be spending money that wasn't necessary. I think we're still in that process. WashDOT is still willing to work with us and respond to us thus far. So I think I'm still not convinced that this is money that's well spent, given that we have other purposes for the money that is in the traffic calming account, and that it isn't currently sufficient to do the work that we typically do in a year. So for me, I'm not interested in, I think, moving this forward at this time, at least until we wrap up more response from WashDOT and truly understand when they shut us down, before we can come back and bring more. So thank you.
Councilmember Legal has been very patient.
Yes.
John, if you wouldn't mind letting the chief weigh in
absolutely.
here real quickly, that might be instructional for all of us.
Just to add a little clarity on the dollar amounts. So we currently have 70,000 in the street fund account. We have 50,000 we have to pay out for the study, at least $20,000. We currently, if you remember when the public came in on the issue with 187th, where there was the child or the middle elementary school kid that came and talked. We have 2 street feedback signs that are coming in. Those we have not received the invoices for. That'll take out of the 20 grand. We also have the healthy streets that is going to be a topic coming up that will come out of street signs. We're in February right now. That leaves very little for the rest of the year for traffic calming. So when we have these issues that come up with traffic calming, that is a very small budget at that point. And then what we'll end up telling people is we can't move on things because we don't have that money. So I'm kind of advocating for, we need to have that money for traffic calming throughout the rest of the year. So that was my 2 cents.
Thank you, Chief. And on point, Director Vaughn and I had a conversation for almost an hour this morning. Thank you for your time this morning about trying to backstop coming back with a budget adjustment to add additional funds to that account. So, Mr. Lebo, you've been very patient.
So there's a great value for communities to have effective transportation infrastructure. So roads and mobility so that commuters and trucks and freight can move through a community. But I think it also needs to be balanced when you consider speeds and safety is not just for the drivers, it's also for pedestrians. And it's also for a sense of community. Are we to be defined by our state highways for weed to be defined by a community that we want to enjoy, and noise, traffic, and ability to walk on some of the major arterials in Lake Forest Park are hindered in many different ways. WashDOT has always been a good neighbor to us in many ways. But I think also they are strapped sometimes for reliant on data that they have, not necessarily on collecting data. So just reducing the speed limit from 145th to roughly 153rd or 50th on SR 522, and from 35th to 195th on 104 really doesn't address what needs to be a consideration for mobility and speeds throughout Lake Forest Park on our major arterials. And so I am in favor, recognizing that there are budget constraints, but that if we don't produce the data for WashDOT to consider, they may only rely on the data that they have, even if the arguments that we present may not be satisfactory to them, but with data that perhaps could otherwise look at the total picture and not just look at very small areas, because the traffic speed on SR 104
insane.
is even at 35 miles an hour reduction in that small area. It doesn't reflect what the community, I think, really wants, which is an ability to walk along Ballinger Way and feel safe, which is not always possible to do today. And so one of the things that we have is this sort of catch-22. Well, nobody's walking on it, therefore we don't need to lower the speeds. Well, no one's walking on it because we haven't lowered the speeds.
Lord.
So.
Can I say there's actually a traffic calming request we've had for quite a while on SR 104 at the 190 200 block around there.
Yeah.
To get a crosswalk so people can go to the bus stop. In order to get that, we need to get the speed limit down to at least 35 for that to happen. So this is a good thing that they've at least given that section that's important for that to happen.
Colleagues, other questions? Mr. Lebo, your comments are absolutely spot on. Councilmember Goldman.
Yes, so where I am at, I think the latest update I've seen from Sound Transit is they're targeting mid-2028 for the Stride project. And so on the one hand, I don't really want to wait over 4 years for for WashDOT to reevaluate the 522 corridor. But it also sounds like we already have, we're juggling balls in the air now, and that we haven't gotten WashDOT's final request, or sorry, final response to when we refuted their data based on previous analysis. So I suppose where I'm at now is let's wait for that process to play out. Let's wait for a final response from WashDOT about our refutation of their data. And if at that point they still don't want to budge on the 38th to Kenmore segment, then I think we can go back to Transpo and ask them to do a more thorough analysis. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, other comments on point? Councilmember Good.
Well, I want to thank Councilmember Lebo for bringing it up to have Transpo take a look at it. I do appreciate that. And my question is, are there any, in the last, say, 12 months, are there any speed related issues in the area that they do not want to lower the speed? Either traffic or accident, anything like that?
Heat map is pretty.
Most of our traffic collisions happen on Bothell and Ballinger Way, but that has been for decades, and I foresee that's going to be because that's the most volume of traffic. We have had one fatality that was on 104, but that was somebody doing things they shouldn't have been doing on a scooter. But I don't have that exact answer for you to say this is specifically what's going on. It's our general problem with collisions is on Bothell and Ballinger Way with our numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Riddle.
I would, at least for the last month, direct our colleagues to the city administrator report and the heat map, and the heat map does concentrate more in the commercial area in the south, and then in the commercial area around the town center. The bit in between is a little bit more sparse, but it is still our most dangerous areas, basically. So, but I don't know if we can parse out with, you know, that level of detail without spending more time or money.
I can't see it on TV. Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Councilmember Lebo, are you okay with waiting and letting these discussions play out and then bringing this topic back to the council once we see how that goes? Because if we can succeed with, you know, just even walk the corridor there, information and the number of crosswalks, if we can succeed, then we will have saved $21,000. So
So-
now maybe that won't work, but
I think it's a reasonable suggestion to wait till WashDOT responds. But that is really only on SR 522.
correct.
I do think, though, that we should proceed forward on SR 104 Ballinger Way, and I think we can wait. But even if they come back and say, yes, we'll lower the speed limit along Bothell Way to 35, I would still encourage the council to move forward with a study on SR 104.
So, and this is a question. So would you do the study now, even though we don't have the roundabout project scheduled yet? What's the connection in your mind between doing the study now and the roundabout? I don't know the answer. I'm not raising it as an impediment. I just don't, I'm interested in your thinking.
It's more about speed, safety, sense of community. The roundabout will have some slowing as you go around it, yes, both on the approaches to it. But that still leaves the areas between SR 522 and all the
Sure.
way up to 195th.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And can I just say one more thing? Chief, thank you so much for being responsive to the neighbors on 187th. They made a pretty compelling presentation, and I appreciate the fact that our city is responsive. And I had not heard that, so it's very much appreciated.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Mr. Councilmember Lebo, you had suggested that we work on Ballinger, for example, with Transpo to get that lowered. They've lowered it from 40 to 30. Are you looking for that to be at 30 miles per hour?
So they look, the proposal that WashDOT has is to lower it from 40 to 35.
35, correct.
Only in the area from like 100.
From 35 all the way through shoreline.
Yes. But that doesn't address anything between 35th and SR 522 or recognize should it even be at 35 miles an hour for
It's currently 30.
30.
30. Right, but my point is, should it even be 30?
Yeah.
City of Seattle major thoroughfares
Yeah,
are
25.
25 miles an hour.
Max, yeah.
So your goal would be to have 104 be 25.
My goal is to balance transportation infrastructure with mobility and a sense of community. When people are traveling at 30, 35 miles an hour and you live close to the road, your sense of community is different than if people are traveling at 25 miles an hour and people are walking along the street because they feel safe. Sure. Those translates into a different sense of community. If the area or sidewalk in front of my house is not used because nobody feels like it's a place they want to walk, that's a different sense of community than having people drive by at 35 or 40 miles an hour.
Thank you, Councilmember. And John and I are long enough in the tooth that we remember when it was 25 miles an hour.
Yes, I do.
Back then, it was the horse-drawn carriage days. I can't remember.
And my paper route was on Ballinger
Yeah, my
Way,
paper
and I
route too.
crossed that
Yeah.
road
Yeah.
many times.
But there's some sensitivities that we all have about that. So, thank you. Colleagues, any other questions for the Director Perigo or the Chief? Thank you very much, Jeff and Chief. Yeah, and Councilmember Lebo, you're singing my tune. I really believe strongly that the speed limits have to come down, and we'll do everything we can to move that forward as quickly as we possibly can. Okay, with that, we're moving on to item 11, other business amended, continued discussion regarding healthy streets proposal. This is council members Goldman and Riddle. Which of you would like to take point on this? Or
Council-
tag team?
Goldman, do you want me to run it from here? Would that be easier for you?
Yeah, if you're happy to, yeah, I think, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, okay. Do we have the slides to come up? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Matt. So we've talked about this Healthy Streets proposal in front of council and with you all a couple of times already. We took to heart what we heard from council, and we spent some time really understanding how to bring kind of this idea and make it real. So we spent some time with city staff to really understand. So the chief and Director Perigo, to understand what the impact a program like this might have on our city and their function, and how they would actually implement making a healthy street into a healthy street. So we had some really great conversations. And so what you'll see here is sort of bringing in their experience and sort of shifting the proposal just a little bit to make it something that we think can help our community. So motivations and goals. That was one of the questions, is what are our goals? So we wanted to be very clear. We want to encourage more people to get around the city by walking and cycling. And then some streets that are known for cut through traffic, we want to make that we feel that makes them less safe for non-motorized uses. Again, it's that you don't go use the street if you feel it's unsafe. So we wanted to be able to take away that feeling of unsafe and give them back their safety in their own community. We did kind of have some inspiration from Seattle's Healthy Street program that was brought up, implemented during the pandemic as a way to allow people to get out into the safe outdoor environment during the pandemic. But it had some really great benefits just in general about bringing community together. And we thought we would lean into that aspect of the program. And then rather than dictating streets, or rather than creating sort of a top down, we listened to the council and really thought about, okay, we're going to have the residents request and have the ability to request their street so that they know their neighborhood the best. So we will let them drive the train there. Next. So the changes that are different from what we presented in September. The city staff have the ability to accept applications from residents for a request for along their own street. We didn't want to create a duplicate parallel process to the traffic calming group. So we've already recognized the traffic calming group has the authority to make changes to the physical aspect of a street. They got the speed radar signs, they can do modified signage, paint, speed bumps, raised crosswalks, lighting, and then the education aspect. So the feeling from city staff and Councilmember Goldman and myself is that it would be better for the council to grant the traffic calming group the authority to designate a street as a healthy street, rather than making it a separate parallel program. Just streamline it. Thinking that. So pilot, this is where we talked about briefly that we came to the conclusion that we want it to be organic and from the community. So a resident will apply. They will say that the stretch of street that they want to have looked at, and the traffic calming group will take that into consideration. Next. So here's some key language from the resolution. So the council supports that the neighborhood traffic calming program to add the Healthy Streets program. So we're not creating a parallel program, we're just adding it to one of their tools. So the goal, lessening the impact of cut through traffic and increasing safety and enjoyment of residents in their streets, really hoping to hit both goals. So gives the opportunity for communities to sort of speak to one or the other, or preferably both if they have that opportunity. The program would allow a conversion of a residential street as requested And doing so, the program should consider a few things. So creating and updating a publicly accessible GIS map on the city website that will provide the designations for all city and state roads. And these are designations that already exist. It's kind of a map that already exists. It's just really putting out there intentionally in the public sphere tied to this program. So it would identify your arterials, your neighborhood arterials, neighborhood collectors, and then your basic neighborhood roads is the lowest intensity roads. Next. And then we would use those road designations to determine whether a street is eligible to be included in the program. So arterials, neighborhood arterials, and then neighborhood roads that also have access, direct access to property types other than the single family or middle housing. So that's your commercial, that's your multifamily, things of that nature. Those would not be eligible. So we've kind of just taken those out of the scope to start with. And then that leaves neighborhood roads that are independent from other types that are just single family middle housing. And then the neighborhood collectors are, we went back and forth with staff. Are these important? Can we do it? Can we not? And the answer came back as they don't know. They don't know enough about neighborhood collectors in each individual circumstance. So for those to be considered, there would have to be some sort of traffic study to be performed. And that would be at the discretion of the traffic calming group. Do they have the funding? Do they have the time? Do they have they already done one and established that it's not needing traffic calming? So we left that in their hands as they know what their budget and what their capacity is. If they feel like the traffic study would show that it could be calmed, then we would leave it up to them to engage in that. We do want to establish some standard signage. We want it to not only communicate that it's a healthy street, but that it does also allow vehicular traffic. It's not completely closed off as a pedestrian only street. It definitely allows emergency services, road maintenance, emergency detours by the city in the event that we have to detour off an arterial into that due to a traffic accident or some other issue. Delivery access would be unimpeded. And of course, all essential vehicles should still be able to freely access down those roads and provide services. The program will establish standards for determining a selection of signage or barriers, street artwork, or other features that will visually indicate the entrances to these healthy streets. Each street, each neighborhood may have a different need. It may be a simple sign. They may want to create some sort of street identity with some sort of street artwork at the entrance on the ground. The costs of those are different. The impact to accessibility is different. So again, those are just options that the traffic calming group has at their disposal. And they would work with the community members what is appropriate for that particular situation. And of course, we want them to track the capital costs of implementing these so that we can know how much it's costing and what the impact is to budget and in total. And again, not to make a parallel process, the application process follows the current process for to request traffic calming through the website. So no changes there. Next. Was that it?
That's it.
That's it.
That's it.
That is it.
Next
Thank
I
you.
have is a CA report.
I won't go into that. I
You're
won't
welcome
read that
to
word
try.
for word.
Yeah, go for it.
Councilmember Goldman, I want to, do you have anything further to add?
I think you did a really good job. What I'll add is we had a really productive meeting. We met with Chief Harden, with Director Perigo, and with representatives from Transpo Group, just to make sure that we all understood what our goals were for the program. Those twin goals of reducing cut-through traffic and making it safer and more attractive for people to walk and cycle on local streets. So I think we're in a good place there, and just figuring out, if those are our twin goals, what would be the best, most efficient way to achieve those goals? And then this is what we came up with at that meeting.
Councilmember Riddle.
And I would, since we did just address the traffic calming group budget, this is not a direction for them to start implementing and doing this. This is simply giving them a tool that they can reference. So if it fits within their budget and they have the ability to build in the signage, that would be their ability to be able to use that. So it just gives them another tool in addition to some of the more expensive options of speed bumps or adding traffic lights and things like
Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Yes, I just have some questions about implementation. I actually like the idea of having it within the umbrella of the traffic calming group because I think it fits there very well. But it is kind of a separate program, so I was just thinking about how would it operate. And we had talked at a previous discussion about the fact that you would want, again, just like the parking permit process, neighborhood parking permit process, that we would want 70%, I'm sorry, of the residents in that geographic area to somehow indicate support. So I assume that somehow that would still be incorporated into this as a policy guidance for the healthy for the Healthy Streets program. And then the second question I had was, so there is like a stand-up process. Would we ask the neighborhood to pay some startup costs for this?
To address your first comment, when we were talking about the parking program, the 70% actually came from the traffic calming groups.
Yes.
When they need to do like a speed bump or something,
Okay.
that's their criteria. So they would continue to use the same criteria.
Wonderful.
And as far as, I already lost your second
the
thought.
fees.
The fees.
Yeah.
We did not discuss passing along costs at this time.
Okay.
I think the initial startup cost is around the design of the signage.
Right.
And then purchasing of the signage.
Okay.
So we don't know what that is exactly. I think at this point, I would say if there's no budget, that this isn't gonna start happening really soon.
Right.
But we would definitely need to consider that cost, but we don't know what that cost is yet. We don't have, we haven't asked them to run an estimate.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
And we didn't know for the other one either, so I just, so the other question is for signage. Is that something that we would rely on the expertise of the traffic calming group? And then they would kind of communicate to the community. And if the community wanted something more than bare bones, perhaps they'd have to, if they wanted
Cost share.
artwork, they'd have to cost share. Is that consistent with what you're thinking?
I think so. I think so. The Transpo group does have a design consultant that they use for helping designing things like street signs. So that is an avenue that we can take, that there's a cost again to that. But yes, I think unless we are flush with money, I think there might, for anything above the standard signage, we might be looking at cost sharing, just depends. Again, also things like street artwork would need regular maintenance and refreshing. So that is a commitment that a neighborhood would have to make. And so cost sharing might be a part of that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I appreciate your following up on this with Public Works and our police department, because I think obviously implementation is the challenge. So thank you.
Colleagues, other questions? Councilmember Tonigan and Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council Members Riddle and Goldman for this great proposal. I love how you amended it and basically made it less redundant and streamlined it a bit. I'm just wondering, let's say neighbors get together and say, this sounds like a great idea. Would they get a mock-up of what the signage might look like, what the street might look like after the change?
We didn't discuss that specifically.
Mhm.
I think we would have standard signage. So that would be kind of, again, so that as you're moving through, it's easy to recognize what these streets are.
Right.
I think if they wanted something above and beyond that, in addition to that, I think that might be something we might need to mock up, but I would say that's a variable right now that we haven't addressed. And again, it would be up to the traffic calming group to kind of maybe put boundaries on that.
That's great, because I think more people might go for this if they knew what the effect on the neighborhood look would be. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping you're considering, and it sounds like you are. So thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Lebo.
So following up on that, and I appreciate it, opportunities to make our streets and community more user-friendly is always welcome, and healthy streets, I think, is a great way to talk about it. You mentioned sort of following along the Seattle lines. Remind me, what does that model look like? And I'm always a fan of and believe that copying is a great form of flattery. And that simply putting a sticker over Seattle to say Lake Forest Park can be very cost efficient.
I think that we discovered there was some distinct differences between their current program and kind of what we were hoping to achieve here. Part of their program excludes through streets, which is what we're hoping to target is prevent through traffic through streets that don't belong to that community. So we really went back to kind of more of the intent of their original program during the pandemic, where it was about providing those safe spaces. Many of those streets are no longer pedestrian or no longer sort of safe streets in their or healthy streets that they had. But there still are a few. Councilmember Goldman lives just north of one street that has continued to stay closed off. And the intent of that one was to drive through traffic to an adjacent, more arterial street. And so that's, I think, kind of what we were hoping to do. Let's take through traffic off of our residential streets and sort of drive that traffic to the more appropriate arterial streets that are nearby, that are designed, hopefully, to take that traffic and that will be designed sidewalks and safety in our complete vision coming out of the Safe Street study. So we tweaked Seattle quite a bit, especially their current program. So we tried to rubber stamp it, but it didn't work for us.
So just one other comment. I would have a preference that these be city funded. And the reason for that is really one of equity. In Lake Forest Park, there's quite a divergence of community sort of economic viability. And I would be very disappointed if only the areas that economically were much more able to take advantage of this, when I believe that in areas that otherwise are less economically advantaged are the ones that really need it.
Yeah, I hear you. And I hadn't thought about that in that context yet. And I do appreciate that comment very much.
Possibly.
We're good, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Possibly if there is a revenue sharing, maybe it goes into a pot of where, and maybe if a neighborhood that is less affluent is applying for a safe street, then it's like the money goes into the pot and they're funding them in order of application maybe, or, there's maybe a way to share the money of the people that have with the have-nots, but just in a pot of getting stuff done. I don't know. That's my thought.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, so just a couple of thoughts related to this. Yeah, the one that's near my neighborhood, it's 37th Avenue Northeast. So from 145th down to, I think it's Cedar Park Elementary, that's still a healthy street. And the way it works physically is there's a sign and it's kind of it's easy to move. It's not drilled into the ground, so that it allows for cars, emergency vehicles, delivery, local traffic to get through. And in the event there was an emergency and the road needed to be fully open, it would just be a matter of someone, either in police or public works, to just physically move the sign off to the side. So it's designed to be fairly flexible. In terms of cost sharing, I kind of envisioned it would be similar to the other options that are available. So do we charge for speed bumps? And if we don't charge for speed bumps, I wouldn't envision we would charge for healthy streets. And if we do charge for speed bumps, then we would, but in the same sort of way. So I kind of figured it would follow the other physical implementations that the traffic calming group can do.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just quickly on point, 74th and 1st near Greenwood is the one that when we first started this conversation a couple years ago, that's what I was thinking. I think that's a great model if you get a chance to go up there. Don't look on Google Earth because the street view shows the old barrels. They use barrels, which doesn't work. They have nice planters and things that really are quite effective. And I can send you some photos that I took just a couple weeks ago as well. Councilmember Riddle.
I think the one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the opportunity if, as these get officially sort of restricted to local access only, then it will get updated in the map systems and route finding systems. So they will stop intentionally directing people onto these streets because it's got an official designation. So that's sort of another key element of preventing that through traffic through those communities. Yes.
Yes. I was applauding out loud. I apologize. Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Colleagues, other thoughts on this? Thank you, everyone, for this. Excellent presentation. We're moving on to council committee reports. We did not have any council committees, I don't believe, during the previous weeks. Council member reports, colleagues. Deputy Mayor Bodie. Of course.
We had both a Parks Board and a Planning Commission meeting recently. The Parks Board was deliberating the options that you saw this evening and talking about the pros and cons of the different options and thinking through the implications of some of them. You know, paying attention to the cost, but also looking at what's the preferred alternative for the park going forward. And some of the questions you as council members had, the Parks Board members had as well. So they are, I think they were already starting to formulate some thoughts on recommendations. So that was interesting. The Planning Commission met this week and was doing a line by line of the land use section of the proposed new comprehensive plan. And it was really complicated, and it was I applaud them for doing that. So anyway, and they are going to be continuing to move on with line by line review of environmental quality and another topic that I don't recall right now. So they're into the slogging a little bit to get through this. I think my observation is one of the challenges, because we have so many new requirements, is to, and I heard this a little bit on the sides of the room, is to write it in a way that checks off the right boxes from the terms of the requirements of all these different documents that tell you what you have to do. And yet have it readable to you as a citizen of the community and have it kind of resonate with you as to what it means. And it's the original document had that flavor to it, and it is much harder to incorporate all these new requirements and have that communication element of it, that, oh yeah, this is what our community is, or that's what this means. So it's an interesting, it hadn't occurred to me till this meeting that there would be that tension. So anyway, more to come.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Furtani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and just wanted to report back. We had a Climate Action Committee meeting and trying to institute some of these reforms in our governance manual that we just instituted tonight. I believe the leadership of that committee is actually talking to each individual council member. So rather than rely on my kind of poor reports here, you'll have a more in-depth, deep dive discussion with them if you wish. So I think that's a great sign. So in terms of actions, the work plan should be coming to the council at some point fairly soon. And only other thing to note is I wanted to thank the council members who signed on to support the King County Executive on HB 2049 on the REWRAP Act. And I think there were signatures of at least 17 King County cities on that. So hopefully that'll make some difference. So thank you.
Thank you, council member. Any other council member reports?
He was up first.
Okay, Councilmember Goldman.
Yep, I attended two meetings. The tree board met yet last night. They spent the bulk of their time going over their 2024 work plan. And so their sort of immediate task is planning an Arbor Day event. They're thinking about ivy removal, like a demonstration of ivy removal around, if you know where the Carrie Lewis house is, around 35th and I think 190th or so. And after that, they're planning to pivot on to the data from the tree inventory. They're looking maybe late spring, early summer for some recommendations about exceptional tree diameters. And also Community Development Director Hoffman gave a brief overview of the comprehensive plan. And so there's some thought for the tree boards to reach out to the Planning Commission, to the Climate Action Committee, just to see, are there sections of the comp plan that where tree retention would be relevant, and sort of what recommendations can the tree board give for the comprehensive plan. So that's a summary of the tree board. Seashore met last Friday. We heard two presentations. The first presentation was from PSRC. It was sort of a legislative overview of transportation-related bills, including the TOD, the Transit-Oriented Development Bill that's moving through the legislature. And we had a presentation from Washington State Ferries talking about demographic data. They've been doing quite a few surveys last year about who is using ferries in terms of age, gender, income, just to see what sort of communities are the ferries serving. Are they serving underserved? It's late, I'm in Florida, it's almost midnight. Not undeserved, but underserved communities. Yeah, some of the exact opposite there. Yeah, are there certain populations that the ferries are or are not serving? And so they're hoping to have it, once they do some more analysis of the data, have a publicly facing dashboard so that anyone could look to see, and maybe even looking at individual routes, for instance, downtown Seattle or Edmonds, to see, how well are the ferries serving the communities. So that was a Seashore.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldman. Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you. I hosted the Healthier Here retreat today. It's about 7 hours, and as a retreat is, came up with lots of great questions, and so we'll see where we go from here. But it is one of the things that we did learn is kind of what will be our revenue will be from the Medicaid Transformation Project to institute these community hubs. And it looks like, give or take, 130 to 140 million over the next 4 years to implement this. And we learned a little bit more about what a community hub is, and that it's not just healthcare focused, but it's also where you can go to get access to social services, and hopefully, housing and everything. And the idea is it's a one-stop shop to access a care coordinator who can help you get through whatever it is that you need to at the moment. So trying to create a no wrong door, but also trying to create one door to every door at the same time. Additionally, I got to go and be part of the Coho release that was the other weekend, and it was fantastic. And there was a wonderful story. There was a release 3 years ago, and one of the salmon from that release had returned to the stream. It was amazing, and it was named Hope. Who knew? I think they named all of them Hope, but still, it was. And so we actually got to see Hope there, and then at the same time, release some alvins. Okay, there are eggs, alvin, fry, and smelt. Right. So the alvins, smolts. They are not smelt. And it's not Alvin and the Chipmunks, but that is exactly where my brain went to remember how to pronounce it.
Right.
And so the alvins, they are small. They still have a little egg sac to them, so they're still, in the nursery environment. So there's an incubator there against Lion Creek where fresh stream water flushes into it. They live in the incubator, and they have a free door to go off into the creek and then off into the world to come back in 3 years. And so they get to decide when they're old enough, and then they leave the home, and sometimes they don't, and they have to get a little help at the end of the season. But it's wonderful to see this process at this particular year has come full circle. We've had one return as an adult, and now we're releasing additional ones. That was really awesome. And then I have had a couple of conversations and random encounters with the Shoreline Community College president, Jack Kahn. And one of the things that came up was the amazing campus that they have there, and that they weren't a tree campus USA. And it turns out they were before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, they lost all their processes and they lost their advisory committee. And so they have a commitment to the environment there. They have a commitment to native and indigenous species. And so there's now a renewed interest to be a tree campus USA, like we are a tree city, which means that there will be hope for even more canopy coverage and more, environmental benefit from trees spreading across the North King County. So it's very exciting to see them take that journey back on again.
Cool. Thank you, Councilmember Bertani.
Thank you. And on point to Councilmember Riddle's comment, I'd want to call out the work of one of our own residents, Jeff Jensen, who's a professor of biology at the University of Washington, who set up the incubator, who gave a talk at the release, and really was wonderful at communicating a bunch of complex scientific information to a group of about 40 residents. So I think, we really need to tap into our community more because there's so much expertise here.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman.
And to follow, there was a lot of requests for incubators, but he needs grant money. But the interest of the community is there, which I think is the good first step.
But he did say he was going to be reaching out to the city for looking for grant
Yes,
support.
perhaps
so,
he will.
yeah. Colleagues, other council member reports. I'll try to be brief. Yes, the event was fantastic on Sunday. Both Councilmember Riddle and I and Councilmember Bertani. Councilmember Riddle and I had our little ones there. Yours not so little. That was really fun. I first released salmon into Brookside Creek I won't tell you how long ago, one of the first classes of that back many years ago. And my daughter continues to do that Brookside every year, which is really fun. They're not ready yet, but that was a really cool event and quite a large crowd, honestly. It was, 75 people probably. And the hosts were so gracious and Jeff Jensen as well, being gracious with his knowledge and understanding and help educate people. As I was walking out of there, some of you know Jim Halliday. He handed me, a long-term resident of the community, he went to his car and handed me 2 record albums. I'm afraid to say that they're my jazz band from when I was in junior high that he had in his garage. So yeah, someday I will play those for you all so you can enjoy that, from Kellogg Middle School. Yeah, the co-host was great. It was a lot of fun. I did have a couple meetings. Larry touched on Seashore. Larry, my hat's off to you for an excellent co-chairing of that meeting. I know your first go around or second go around on that. Thank you for that. It was a really instructive meeting and a good productive group there. I attended the North End Mayor's meeting. Comprehensive plan. That's whatever is on everyone's mind right now. And I have to say that I said, in consideration of our friends on the Planning Commission, as well as our Mr. Mark, get back there, our Community Development Director, that I think we're moving ahead on schedule. And I know it's a difficult slog, as Councilmember Bodie said, or Deputy Mayor Bodie said, but we are not in panic mode, and other cities are. So hats off to you all who are involved in that. I wanted to give a shout out to Public Works, both for dealing with Tiregate in a very, very, very short time frame. Thank you, Jeff, to you and your team, getting on that so quickly. It was just in a number of hours that the tires were removed. As been noted, there was another event. PD was involved in sorting out the other event, and one suspect has been apprehended in the other event. So we'll see how it goes. It's not unique to our community, but thankfully there was no serious environmental damage, because it could have been a lot worse than it was if you've seen the pictures. I also wanted to give a shout out to the Public Works for taking care of somebody tagged, thankfully not the mural on McAleer Creek and where the salmon mural is there at 178, but they got underneath the bridge and did the graffiti the whole underside of the creek. And Public Works took care of that within a very short period of time. Thank you, Director Perigo, for taking care of that. PD had a variety of incidents, including some challenging break-ins recently. I saw it made the news, I think yesterday too, looking for support and any tips on that. And I'm sorry, Chief, I know that's a huge distraction for your team, but thank you for a prompt response and everything else. We did have a celebration of democracy on Saturday. Thank you to Clerk McLean, Matt, for your team for setting up the inauguration. It was a fun event, and we were regaled with both Councilmember Goods and former Deputy Mayor Cassover's better halves playing music, as well as a couple other individuals. And I heard from one, I believe she's 95-year-old resident who, as she walked out, grabbed my arm and said, "That's the best music the Civic Club's ever had." So that's high praise from somebody who's been here for 70 years. So, and with that, I don't have anything else to add. The CA's report is in your packet. Acting CA, Mr. Perigo, did you have anything to add? Oh, I did have one thing to add. 3:30 this afternoon, coming down Ballinger Way. Traffic screeched to a halt because a deer was skipping across the road. I mean, how magical is that? Did you have anything to add, Jeff, to the CA's report? Or your... Okay, if there's nothing else for the good of the order.
Mayor, just wanted to
I'm sorry.
make a quick
Please.
reminder about the Jurassic Parliament on Saturday.
Thank you.
So everybody remembers.
It is one of the only times you get to play with dinosaurs in this council chamber. So please enjoy it, and we'll see you at 9 o'clock, I believe. And I think Deputy Mayor Bodie's bringing donuts and coffee.
Absolutely. Where is
I,
the donut shop in Lake Forest?
that's right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Larry, for staying.
Yeah, the rest.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank
Have
you.
rest, Ellen.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.